I'll try not to make this too long. Somebody maybe should give me a hook or something if I take too long. I thank you for this opportunity to share my faith with you. To me, being a Christian means that you have a certain way of viewing the world and a certain way of doing things in the world. It's as if someone were to draw a comic strip and had the artistry to draw a white light around the head. A Christian would be the comic strip character that had a white light around their head. And what it means to me is that as following the Christian faith, you inspire and uplift people rather than tear people down. That you try to give a cheerful word to someone who may be down. That you try to bring people together rather than to tear them apart. My faith tells me that faith helps you to cope with the tragedies and the vicissitudes of life. Otherwise, what is faith for? What does it mean? The most important spiritual influence in my life was my mother, who early on stressed the importance of giving your time and talent to God. She stressed also that we didn't come here to stay, that we came here to prepare for our heavenly home. And as an obedient son, I generally followed what my mother laid down. However, during the course of my life, I must confess that there were periods of time when I regarded church going as irrelevant or immaterial. When I believed that you carry your church inside you, that you internalize the ideals and values of the Christian faith, and that you don't need to go to church all the time. I must confess that if I were still at that place, I probably would never have joined this church. So now I realize that there is a value in community. There is a value in being a member of a community of believers. At an early age, I grew up in the church, and my mother felt it was part of her Christian duty to expose all of us to church, especially Sunday school. Service was kind of optional, but Sunday school was mandatory. It wasn't. It was a definite expectation. And growing up in the church in high school, I participated actively in Baptist Training Union and Sunday School Superintendent, and I was a very active member. And then I went away to college, and you know how that thing happens. The cycle of my regular church attendance was broken and has only recently been revived. While away at college, I happened to attend a college which was Presbyterian affiliated at that time, and one of the requirements was a course in religion. So I took several courses in religion, as it turned out, and I'm glad that I did. I took a course in the Judeo-Christian tradition and a course in the world's living religions, and I was exposed to the various faiths in the world. And as well as taking philosophy courses, that one of the favorite topics was, I think, called ontology, the theory of the various theories for the proofs of the existence of God. And one of the things that I realized, all of this was very fascinating to me, but I realized that without faith, it's very difficult to be convinced rationally of the existence of God or of the meaning of God or what God means to you in your life. And, you know, I thought about how does knowing what Paul Tillich describes as God as the ground of being, does that help your personal faith? What does that do to advance your personal faith? And I think it all comes down to a sort of a belief and an inculcation within the person of the values that Christ gave to the world, and an attempt to live out those values. And I mentioned my mother, who was the most important spiritual influence in my life, and she passed away in 1999. And throughout our lives together, she had always stressed that whenever we were faced with some kind of personal family tragedy, that, we didn't come here to stay. And that certainly helped me to deal with her loss, because I know that that's what she would have told me had she been able to tell me. And she did tell me in a certain way. But again, that really helped me to cope with her loss. And seeing how she confronted her own mortality would have convinced me to become a Christian had I not been a Christian. Basically, she lived out what she had always talked about. And she faced her own mortality with a sense that I know that I am a child of God and that God loves me. My faith now tells me that you don't have to be perfect to be a Christian. That each of us builds temples to God as we try to construct our lives. Michael Ann mentioned several months ago that the Central Expressway in Dallas always will be under construction. So should our lives be under construction as we head down the right highway, to mix the metaphor. And I'll come to the right highway part of it in just a minute. But I think we should live each day of our lives as if the great comic strip writer in the sky, so that the great comic strip writer in the sky would be able to draw around our heads that white light that shows that we're living out the Christian life. I would like to close with a brief excerpt from a Martin Luther King sermon that when I first heard the sermon on tape, it really had a powerful impact on me, because it just seemed to me that it caught me in a certain place where the meaning of it was clear, and it sort of showed where I was and where I hoped to be. And I'll read the excerpt from you. I'll read the excerpt to you at this point. In the final analysis, God does not judge us by the separate incidents or the separate mistakes that we make, but by the total bent of our lives. Salvation isn't reaching the destination of absolute morality, but it's being in the process and on the right road. The question is whether you are on the right road. Salvation is being on the right road, not having reached a destination. Oh, we have to finally face the point that there is none good but the Father. But if you're on the right road, God has the power, and He has something called grace, and He puts you where you ought to be. Thank you.